Now there comes a time when you do write a function and you need to return multiple values from that one function. It's just a got to be done. In this video I'm going to provide you with 3 pretty good examples, but still basic examples of when and why you would want to return multiple values using tuples, okay, and all these examples. So when we say return multiple values in a function, we are talking about returning a tuple that contains multiple values inside of it. So a function can only ever return one value, all right, but we use tuples to be able to define what type we want to return without talking about structs or classes or stuff like that, all right. So what we are talking about here is tuples and functions together. So with that said, let's just walk and talk through this example. It's pretty clear already. So we have a function called divide and remainder, and we take as the first parameter, then the dividend, which is then an integer, and then the divisor, which is another integer as well. So, and as you can see here, the quotient is then the dividend divided by the divisor, right? And then the remainder is then the dividend, then modular the divisor, okay? So we can then see that we get the quotient and then the remainder being returned, which then creates our tuple as our return one value. And see, when we're calling it, we say divide and remainder. And if we just do this again, you can see how what the code completion looks like. And you can see that we get then the dividends is then 10, and then the divisor is then, let's say, 5. And let's just remove this. Let's just build and run this to show you what it actually does. Output, when it does output, this is the first time I'm making videos today, so it always takes a little bit longer. And it's still going, it's still building. This is the lovely thing about Xcode, is it always takes a long time to build something very small. All right, and it looks like we're going now. Again, as you can see here, the quotient is then 3, and the remainder is 1. And as you can see, 10 divided by 3 is going to be 3 point something, but we want to know what the quotient is, and then we want to know what the remainder is. So we know it divides by 3, and there is 1 of a remainder as well. So this is our first example of how this works. Now, why you would want to do this is of no relevance. If you need to have something that's calculated like this, then this is what you do. Now moving on to our second example of a function to calculate the sum and the average of an array. As you can see here, we have a function called calculate sum and average, and it takes only the single parameter, and the only parameter that it takes is then of numbers, and that is an array type of integer as well. And it returns then a tuple with the first property of an integer, second of a double, and then we've got then the labels are then sum and then average. So in the body of the function, you can see that we are then taking the numbers, and then we are reducing it down to sum up everything. We haven't talked about this yet, but you're just going to have to trust me. It's going to go through all of the numbers here, and it's just going to add them all up to get the sum of that array, okay? And then we're going to get the average. We're going to cast, or we're going to change the value of this sum to a double, so we can then divide it by the numbers dot count, so the length of the number of items in there. Just the basic arithmetic here is taking the sum of it and divide it by the number of items in the collection, and that then gives us the average. And then we're going to return our tuple with sum and average there as well. And this is then basically it, and we call it calculate sum and average. We add in the numbers, and then when we build and run it once again, you can see that we get the sum of 15 and the average of 3. Returning tuples is a helpful thing in some cases. Some other cases it's not very helpful, and there are other ways to do it. But if you do need to return multiple values from a function, this is definitely the way to do it. Now there are ways where you could use in and out and so on, but I haven't covered that yet. But I would much prefer that you use this way of doing it, rather than having to create structs or classes or in and out parameters and so on, because this doesn't require you to define any other types. This return type here is completely connected and only connected to this one function. So it means that you can copy and paste this one function declaration and put it into any other module, any other framework, any other code, and you can share it without having to worry about any other dependencies or anything like that. So it's always a helpful way to use as little code as possible to have the most effectiveness, all right, the most value for it. So yes, I can hear some people thinking, why don't you just use a struct or something like that? But that adds another layer of complexity to it, because then you have to find a place where the struct can live. You have to be able to share that as well. You might have to have an import or something like that. And this is just the easiest way to do it. All right. And the easiest to most simple code is always the best code to use. All right. So now the third and final example here is the function to split full name into first and last name. So we are given a full name string as for the function of split name, and we're going to return the first name and last name. Yes, you could put this in an array, but we want like this nice dot syntax. We want to be able to say name parts dot first name and name parts dot last name. So it gives us this nice feeling, you know, it's easily readable, it's clean code, and that's more important than it saying name parts and then using the first index and the second index and so on. It doesn't tell us what it's supposed to be. This gives us some form of declarative information. So we get the name coming in, and what we're going to do is we're going to split it down into parts, and basically we're just going to say, hey, separate this string of characters into then words, all right, and separated by an empty space. An empty space. Then all we're going to say here is we're going to say give me the first element of that one array, and else just give me an empty string. And we're going to do that for the last as well, otherwise give me an empty string. So this could have a whole bunch of names in the middle here, and it's only going to give the first and last, right? Or this could be an empty string, and then it will give literally an empty string for the first name, an empty string for the last name. So it provides a little bit of this here provides a little bit of an emergency just in case the string was empty in the beginning. Okay, so let's just roll that one back. And then we just run this code once again, or run this code, and you can see first name John and last name Doe. And if we do then just remove it all completely and run it again, you'll see we get first name empty string and last name empty string as well. So it works in any case that you want, all right? And if we then say David James Thorne, you've kind of guessed what it's going to come out. It's going to say David and then Thorne, because it separated it with these empty spaces here, and it said only give me the first and the last name. And if we come here and we just run it with David, then it will just say first name David, last name David as well, because the last element is also the first element here. All right, so this is something to remember, is that this is why it's so helpful to be able to use stuff like this. All right, because maybe you could maybe add a thing here saying if name parts is more than one, then give the last here. But this is just basically a simple example to show you. With that said, I hope you've got something out this one video. I just wanted to make sure that you understand that there are times when you can and should use tuples to have functions with multiple return values. If you did like this, then do the normal liking, subscribing, sharing, and if you do have any questions, concerns, feedbacks, or anything like that, let's start a conversation in the comments section down below. Other than that, thank you very much for your support. Thank you very much for your daily comments and so on. It really does mean a lot to me to know that I am growing a small family here of people that are interested in learning the Swift programming language. This is exactly the reason why I'm making these videos. I'm making these videos for you, not for me. I want to pass on my knowledge to you, and I hope over the course of the next weeks that you're really getting something out of this. And yeah, I know that come the end of this, I don't know how many videos it's going to be a lot. Come the end of these videos, I know that you will be extremely competent Swift programmers by the end of it, as long as you stick it through, watch some of these videos more and more, and I promise you, I am passing my knowledge on to you, and you will find your place. You will find a job if you just trust me and keep watching these videos. All right. With that said, thank you very much for watching, and I will see you in the next video, either tomorrow or the next video in the playlist. Thanks very much then, and ciao and goodbye.